Well, you can heckle if you like.
Just a little bit.
No, I enjoy a bit of heckling. As long as it's not, you know, deeply personal.
And so, to heckle, you need the light out who's hiding the screen.
Well, I'll ask in a second.
Suppose we'd all go to sleep. Yeah.
When the music stops.
Are you sitting comfortably?
Sorry for the delay. My dad refuses to leave to the stand until he thinks everyone's here.
How does he know?
I don't know. It's one of those, isn't it? I don't know what otherwise in the room.
Here he is.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry. I'm trying to balance on one foot. Right, got it.
Hello folks, yeah, so sorry we're struggling for space. It's good, it means that it's a good talk, but anyway, we've got some chairs just over here, so if you're forced to stand, I mean, you might not get a great view of the projector, but there are some seats just over there, and otherwise we're just trying to squeeze in where we can. Might be able to fit one more here, maybe. Anyway, it's lovely to see so many of you, so thank you for coming. Just a quick mention of the fire exits. So in the case of an emergency, the main fire exit is the front door. So you just head out the front door and then go to the top right of the car park, just over there. Any issues with this exit at all? We've got this exit at the back. You follow the stairs down, go around the building to outside the post office. Hopefully you won't need that, just so you're aware. I'll now pass on to Ben.
Thank you.
Using domestic water.
Okay. So, thanks everyone for coming. I'm utterly surprised about how many people want to talk about this subject. I've been fiddling around with this for years. I'm trying to explain what this talk is about, so I hope it doesn't disappoint. I don't know what you've expected, but I mean, what it is for me is how I learned to better save water in my house. And how are we doing for volume and pace? Are we okay? Yes, okay, brilliant. So this is not going to be stuff that you can Google on the internet, kind of, you know, putting a brick in your bath. It's not that kind of stuff. This is quite experimental stuff that I've been doing on my house for some time. So I thought it's about time I shared it, and you just happen to be the first bunch of guinea pigs I've done it too. So please ask questions. I'm aware my head's been really close to this for quite some time, so that you'll probably encounter stuff that you don't understand and I just gloss over it. So I'm absolutely fine if you stick your hand up and say, what? Okay. It works. So who am I and why am I stood here before you? Well, a lot of you may remember me as a musician, but these days I'm an accredited domestic energy assessor, retrofit assessor, and I'm working on community projects in Brighton, looking at how we deal with 200-year-old houses and bring them up to sustainability standards. I've got a particular focus on water. I don't know why. I think maybe it's just because I went swimming so much in my youth, perhaps. I don't know. So I've been doing this for a decade. I want to show you the side benefits of what I've done. I mean, some saving water, but there are other things that go along with that as well. Ideally, I'd like to encourage people to do it, but you'll see as we go along, it's quite involved. So, not to be taken on lightly, and to share in some surprise satisfaction. But I'll give you details of that as we go. I need to tell you about the types of water I'm going to be discussing. I've identified that as being a point you need to know. I mean mains water, right? That's the stuff that gets piped into our house by water companies. Oh, no, it's still there. Tends to be chlorinated, have bits and bobs in it. Rainwater, we all know what rainwater is. Falls from the sky. I say softer. Are we all comfortable with the concept of softer? Less calciums, less things like that in it? Yeah, okay. Yes, true, yeah. Greywater. Water that has been used and recaptured. Let's be clear about what greywater can be. Lots of different flavours. It's stuff from showers, baths, washing machines, sinks, and it contains varying amounts of biologicals. By that I mean bits of skin, soaps, foodstuffs if it's stuff out of your sink. Okay. And I'm just putting black water in there, and an emoji poo, obviously, because I'm not going to talk about it really, but it's worth noting that that is the name for water. There's a tiny percentage of water that we use to kind of put human waste into, and it's better for the water companies. Okay? So what did I do? How this all started? So we bought a house in 2009, and we decided to put in some water saving measures into the house as we were digging up the garden anyway. We decided to put in rainwater storage. This is how it started. We decided to put a rainwater tank in, and then rewire it to use the toilets. And at the time, I didn't really get the water scarcity problem that's kind of coming steaming towards us, but now, this is in 2015, there's a significant and growing risk of severe drought impacts arising from climate change, population growth, environmental drivers. And I know anecdotally, because I hang around with council types, that there's been some housing projects in the south, you know, got rid of because they haven't looked at the water safety issue. So, you know, the positive thing is, what can we do to make it better, to deal with this approaching risk? So, initially, my rainwater aims and plans, I wanted to decrease water usage for our house. And I did some sums. I calculated the required capacity of the tank using rainfall data that I got off the internet and the planned size of the roof. Incidentally, that, if anyone, I don't know if anyone disbelieves in what's going on with the climate, but since I did those calculations, I need a tank that's twice as big, because when it rains now, it rains so hard that my tank is full, and I have to do everything I can to take the stuff out of that, but we'll come to that later. Massive hole in our garden. In fact, we done two, but don't ask me about that. Someone who's unaware of 45-degree angles. And install the necessary replumbing of toilets, because this is where you start to see the difficulties in this, which is like redoing your whole house. And we only did these, as you'll see, at specific times because of what we're doing in the house. So what is my rainwater system? It's a massive tank in the garden. It's about 2.5 metres tall and 2 metres, I can't remember exactly, but that gives you some idea of the scale.
What's the capacity of it?
4,700 litres. Yeah.
And that's underground.
It is underground, yeah. So, we did it because we're fiddling around with the garden, right? I think they have to be underground for UV. I think you can get above ground ones, but I think they're maybe more problematical. Maybe you need to surround them with something. I've never put one above ground. And that's connected to a pumping system. I've simplified this diagram, but actually there's a lot more going on with this. It's got a mains water backup. It's mains powered. What it means is that anything powered by that, such as the toilets, never fails. So if the tank's empty, then it switches over to mains. Yeah. There is also a filter, by the way, which I'm not mentioning here because it would complicate matters. And I've got a drinking water quality filter on the output of this. So, the water's clear anyway, but it's really lovely and clear in the toilets. It also feeds the garden. We mentioned the chlorine in the mains water. It's a lot better for the garden to have the rainwater going there. I've actually got a water butt as well, but I chose not to mention that, but that's another thing I'm happy to talk about if anyone wants to. And it also feeds the washing machine. So that's the original system. That's system version 1, 2009-10. What did we note from this? Well, we talked about the lack of calcium in the rainwater. Our washing machine showed little sign of calcification. It did actually die, but that was just due to overstuffing. We overstuffed it and the bearings wore out before it actually showed any signs of calcification. So that got replaced last year. So it lasted for, do the maths quickly, Ben, 12 years, let's say. Here's the amazing joy. I was surprised about how joyful I felt about not pooing into drinking water. It became a thing. Every day I was like, oh yeah. That's not been processed to a quality and I've just kind of like pooed in it and flushed it away again. I wasn't expecting that. And we mentioned this already, no chlorine in the rainwater, so it's better for the garden. Yeah. Unsurprisingly, things escalated. After the joy of talked about joy, I'm not going to say it again, I started to resent that. We were planning to go into the roof and add a main bathroom anyway. This was always part of the plan. So the caveat to all of this is I did this at times when we're fiddling with the house. Otherwise it's very invasive. You're ripping up floorboards unless your house is in a particular configuration. So we're planning to go up into the roof anyway. I put it there. Yeah. I was thinking the rainwater's so great. It's lovely on the garden. Why am I now using that to store my waste in? And because I've got a manic competitive streak, I wanted to reduce the water usage even more in our house, see where we could get to. That's a bit of a weird sentence. What that's basically saying is I went off and trained myself. I went off to cat. I initially thought we needed a reed bed. I need to process it and put it back into the environment, man. I soon realised that if you do a reed bed, you end up with a bunch of water you need to put somewhere. And I thought the neighbours down the hill wouldn't like it when somebody created a river above them and started just like, what's this? Oh, it's out of our toilets, don't worry about it. So I went to cat and found out about that. I trained myself up. I trained myself over the whole time about knowledge on saving water. And actually I found out that there's not a lot to say about Greywater. There's about one company. Yes, Mum?
Does everybody know what CAT is?
Oh, I'm so sorry. The CAT is the Centre for Alternative Technology in Mahantliff, which is where amazing place. They have all the technology we need to go into the future. It's very inspirational. If you haven't been there, just go on a day trip, at least to go up and down on the, what's it called? One of those railways that goes up a hill. One of them. There we go. And I went there and stayed there for a weekend in their fantastic passive conference building, and I learnt about Greywater. And I went after a storm, so it was amazing. All the reed beds were just spurting water. I mean, it's not to worry about. It's been through lots of stages, so it's not like it's chemically dangerous, but it was quite dramatic. So yeah, sorry, that's a good example. Thank you for picking me up on my acronym. So I found the one company on the internet who said they could make me a tank. This is now specifically Greywater. I was thinking I need to store some of the water we're using and flush that down the toilet instead. Yeah, let's store the shower water. Let's store the washing machine water. To do that, I needed to modify my rainwater system. Yeah. So, still had the tank. Still had the same system. This has been. That's another story. I've forgotten about this story. So when I put this in the house, this was sort of rare knowledge, and this operated for 10 years with me not being able to find someone to service it, or finding plumbers who said they could and then ran away. Happily now, Rainwater has got to the point where there's a company in Banbury, I think, that now sell these things, but also have a service contract. So when I found them, I took out a gold service contract because that said no, only one call out fee per year, because I knew the system was about to fall apart. And so they've now been up 4 or 5 times this year for the price of one. And I feel like I've got my money out of that, but I was so overjoyed to find a company that would service it. But actually, it's been fine. The water's not calcified that much. The only things that went was a seal or two, and they fixed that now. Yeah, so rainwater mods. I added the dishwasher to the rainwater. So washing machine worked so well, I thought let's put it in the dishwasher.
So to do that, you've had to obviously do pipe changing and pipe work.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess because you'd already gone to the washing machine, getting it to the dishwasher probably
wasn't bad. And actually, what happened, which is a bit painful, is in our house in the 1920s, and when they took the ceiling down to put a joist in, an RSJ, the building person said, "Oh, your joists don't have BS blah 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 printed on them. They'll have to come down." So we lost the entire ceiling. But anyway, I got my rainwater system in, and of course this is now the dishwasher is now operating on rainwater. I was surprised. I phoned up Bosch. I think it was Bosch. Was it Bosch? Anyway, I phoned up the company and said, "Can I run it on rainwater? What are the effects on my warranty?" And they said literally there is nothing in the warranty about rainwater. Whether that means they've thought about it or not, I don't know. It certainly doesn't affect me. But
So
I should maybe explain
with
that.
a dishwasher on rainwater, that isn't normal. I've not heard of anyone doing that before.
No.
Is it hygienic?
Well, it's got a water quality filter on it.
I'm bothered about other things that you wouldn't filter out.
Well, I'm assuming they're only going to be biologicals because of the way the tank's
Bird
set up.
poo and things like that.
That's a good point.
I've not heard of it before.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised.
Yeah. So,
What temperature are you running a dishwasher at? 75 degrees or?
well, we're running it hot every now and again, but we're running it low. I mean, it is all filtered. So it filters through a green roof, which I think has been why I haven't thought overly about that. Interesting. I'm going to go and test my water now. I've tested. I tell you what I did do. Actually, I tested the quality of the rainwater coming into the house and found it was fine for things like that.
Mine's not. Mine's got all sorts of.
Right. Okay. Maybe it's just my roof. Maybe it's the fact that it goes through the green roof first. But I have tested it, and I found it not to be. Though I'm wondering now whether it. What we could test for bird poo. Anyway, we've had no ill effects so far. Yeah.
You're here.
That's a really good point.
Don't worry.
I'm feeling a bit worried.
But you're assuming that the water we get out of the tap is good quality, and yet we know it's come down the river, and therefore it's got residues of nitrates and residues of insecticides in it, and microplastics. So you're actually probably doing better with rainwater.
Probably, yeah. I mean, look, rainwater's probably got plastics in it as well, hasn't it?
You're not drinking it, it's just washing
No.
your library and your...
No, yeah. So it's going through this particulate filter, and I tested it, and it's in no way off the scale. I tested it with fish tank testing strips, which tell you if something can live in it. So whether that's good for a dishwasher or not, I don't know. I can get back to you on that. Yeah. Still the garden, and the modification to add the Greywater system is as the rainwater was previously doing the toilets, it then becomes the Greywater fill. So what that means is when I run out of Greywater, this system fills it up, and that's been the interesting thing I've discovered. As it rains a lot, I've been actually pumping this tank out into the Greywater tank. I fitted a mechanism so I can put it across. Yes.
When you're talking about a dishwasher, you're talking about using the input water from your salvage system.
Yes.
What about the wastewater that comes out?
Right. So, good point. I glossed over this. Or maybe I was going to talk about it in a second, but the input to the Greywater system. No, it's in the next slide actually. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah. Okay. So here's my. It's not actually my Greywater tank. I couldn't find a good photograph of it. That other tank was actually my rainwater tank, but I couldn't find what the other company gave me. So into my Greywater tank goes showers, sinks, baths, and the washing machine. Not the dishwasher and not the kitchen sink. Well, for a start, there's a practical consideration here. So, gravity-wise, because I was putting stuff in the upper floor, it has got to flow into the tank. I did briefly consider putting a motor to pump it all into the tank, but then I thought that's just another thing that's going to go wrong, right? So yeah, to answer your question, I thought there was too many biologicals in sinks because of all the foodstuffs, and then the dishwasher to do that. I thought it would just. We'll talk about the problems I had later on. So that all goes into the tank and then flushes the toilets. Sorry, I lost my place in my notes now. Oh yeah, I wanted to say that it's roughly about 1,500 litres my tank, though I haven't got a listed capacity. That's just from me measuring it internally and doing a maths sum. So let's talk about the problems. Let's talk about the problems I had, because I've had many, and I've got a very understanding family who I love very much. And you'll hear about this. I mentioned that I found the only company on the internet that would make me a Greywater tank. Turned out they were more aspirational than anything else. They earned a lot of money in the Middle East, where water supply is critical, and they make it all by this osmosis process. They're basically desalinating seawater. You're mandated to recycle it. So they're a company, they were just around the corner from me, so I thought, that's good. But they're just around the corner from me because it's close to Gatwick. And they fly out to there, install multi-million-pound schemes. Their director said, just throw something on the website, some chump will buy it. It's me. So Tank 1 turned out to be the first domestic system either the company or me had encountered. It had an anaerobic system of storage. So now we need to talk about what's in Greywater, okay? So Greywater, whatever you do with it, does contain skin, soap, things like that, things that can cause a bacterial party. And the first tank was anaerobic, which meant it stored the water in an oxygen-deprived environment. And as I discovered, once it gets going, that party, and it encounters water when you flush the toilet, that's kind of a massive smell. It smells awful, methane, all sorts of things. Sulphurous smells. Yeah, the crazy refill mechanism. They didn't really know how to build the refill mechanism, so what I got was the longest ball cock mechanism I've ever seen. I kid you not, it's about that long to the bottom of the tank, fitted to a valve at the top, and it just it was rubbish. And that was meant to be, when the tank got to a certain point, it filled it back up again with the rainwater. Right? How are we doing so far? Everyone still on track with how it's going? Good, brilliant. This shows so after I bought the tank, about a couple of months, been working with them, I phoned up and said, can I speak to William, the head engineer? They said, oh yeah, we sacked him. I was like, I was about to tell him that I can't remove my filter because he's put pipework underneath it. So my tank had a filter, but you couldn't remove it because of the way you plumbed it in.
So what was their response?
Well, they did have a good response actually, but I'll go through this and we'll come to it, and if you don't feel like I've answered it, answer me in the end. So there was no way to clean the filter, and there was only one filter. It was on the output, and there was no input filter, which meant my tank filled with crud, and then which got stuck in this carbon filter. And I haven't mentioned actually, as it was carbon and it was just meant to be taking out chemicals, not really filtering things, I couldn't put anything that would really clean my tank in, otherwise it would kill it. And I mean this shows their lack of experience. There was no way to divert the waste, right? So what this meant was, let me just check this if I want to discuss this. Yeah, so no way to divert the waste. So when things did get crazy, I had a tank of smelly water over Christmas and smelly toilets. Right? Things got crazy. The tank filled with biologicals. Luckily for me, I caught COVID. So I couldn't smell it. Everyone's saying, your tank stinks so much. Don't think it does, we're being oversensitive. But yeah, it was a problem. So all that stuff was going in there, and it was because the carbon filter was overwhelmed, joking aside, and the water that's coming out of it was filthy colour. Gosh, I'm going to overrun this a bit. Speed up. So filthy water.
Could you get a pump out?
I did pump it out, but also this is another thing.
Something in.
Unfortunately, I put the tank in before the builders had finished, right? And despite my best intentions, don't put anything down the sink. Oh yeah, right, okay, yeah, good. I found a layer of chemical crud at the bottom, which I think was, despite all the other problems that I had, would have still floored me. So actually what happened to all of that, let's leave that Legionnaires thing for a minute. Can I go back? So they can do that. They did replace the tank. They built me tank version 2, which was great, because I then got to give them a list. I think this is mentioned in other slides, I'm getting out of order here. But I said, listen, actually I'd written them an angry email saying, this tank needs to do this. And they said, don't worry, and they said, we're with you on this, because they knew they'd sacked their engineer for a reason. And they built me a new one. But because of all these mistakes, they told me on the phone there's no additional risk of Legionnaire's disease. And I was like, do I believe you now you've built this tank that doesn't do all these things? So I have actually checked that out for myself. And I went, I had lots of conversations with the Royal Society for Prevention of Accidents and Legionella Control. I think it was them. Actually, my notes fail me on this. I know I contacted someone and they told me it was all okay. So, yeah. Yes, so here we go. Next steps, I've got the design two. I've already mentioned that, don't worry. So, tank 2, I've just realised that in this presentation I don't talk about tank 2. Tank 2 was much better. I could divert the waste, and I'll show you all that in a second. It had a filter that I could remove. It also had an input filter, but we'll talk about that in a second.
Rainwater tank.
This is Greywater tank.
Greywater.
So the rainwater tank, I think there's lots of companies out there doing it now, but I bought mine off Graf. I've got no particular affiliation with them. I just know I bought it. It was German. It worked. So I'd recommend that. That technology seems to be well established, and you can do that. And they build all sorts of things. In fact. So what have I achieved? So I now weekly kind of read all the meters in my house. I did try and hack into Southern Water's Wi-Fi systems to get my meter without leaving the house, but I couldn't. So I had to go out there with a screwdriver, and every week I take a measure, and I measure my Greywater tank, and I do a little bit of some maths to work out. The average usage of a 4-person household, which is what we are, is 3,150 litres per week. That's the only figure that's not accurate. Were I to be perfect, I would have the figure for what we used to use. We use 2,280 on average per week. Of that, 60%, 61% on average is recycled. Our peak has been 70, but there's a lot of maintenance in the system still at the moment, so I haven't quite got there. Our bills for usage are 28% of the average. It doesn't include standing charge, but that's nice to think we're using 30% of what a normal household uses. And admittedly, it's not for the faint-hearted. There's a lot of faff, a lot of fuss, but it is possible. And I believe if the tank, ask me what I want to do in the future, I'd like to develop that tank as a product, and because I believe it could be a lot easier. I've gone through a lot of pain, I think, so other people don't have to. Ideally, that would be the great thing. Also, though, side benefits. This is something I didn't think about when I was doing that. I was just obsessed about water usage, but obviously the heat of the showers and the baths and the washing machine is now kept in the house. And it goes into this tank and it permeates around the house. It also heats the toilets for the system. Yeah. This is CAT again. When I went to CAT and I said, how is your fantastic new conference centre? Passive, amazing. And they said, well, it didn't quite work the way we expected it, because when we did the maths, we realised it was colder, and we've identified the problems being the toilet systems. Because when they fill the toilet systems with cold water, they chill the building, and they're taking just enough heat out of the building to make the equations not work. So, I've built a little, this is another thing that amused the builders, diamond drilling the toilet system. So I've got a temperature sensor in the toilet system. It detects when someone's flushing it. There's an air temperature sensor on the wall, which looks like a microphone. So guests who come to use my toilet, what are you doing to me? No, don't worry, it's just the temperature I'm monitoring. And it all goes to a little computer which tells me, what the temperature is. It detects when someone flushes it, and then it tells me about the temperature changes that happen. And also, as I've got an air quality, this kind of addresses what you were talking about. As I've got a water quality filter on the rainwater system, if I UV process it, I can drink it in my apocalyptic future. And, when the zombies are coming, I'll just be sat there with...
And then you could put that into prototype.
Solar panels.
But solar panels are set that they don't run currently unless there's electricity.
No, I know that. Yeah, that's the flaw in my plan.
You just have to find out what it is.
So, literally, someone in the family has a shower, it goes down the drain into the tank, it's hot water, and so instead of going down the drain and losing all its heat into the earth, It's in the tank, and the tank heats up the house. It's in the utility room. I'll show you some photographs of it later. Yeah. I mean, there's some clues into here about the amount of room this is all taken up. My tank is probably about 2/3 bigger than it needs to be, I think. I would say, based on the ebb and flow of things. But I didn't know that, and they didn't know that. They just built me this thing. They thought, that'll do. We've got one of those in stock, so yeah. Did that answer your question?
So you feed that into your heating system?
No, I mean it's just by convection. Convection, is that the right one? Yeah. So it just literally is the fact that it goes into a room in the house that's part of. We've actually got a ventilation system, so that room spreads its heat
Otherwise,
throughout
the
the house.
utility would
Yeah. It's also where we dry washing as well, so we had to put ventilation to spread to the rest of the house. So happily, two things collided there. So the hot air in there gets pumped around the house, all the moisture taken out. Yes.
How do you manage the moisture level?
So it's an MVHR system. So the hot air in the
MVHR,
thank you. Mechanical ventilation and heat recovery. So what it does is it takes your hot, moist air and pumps it out of the house via a kind of matrix where it meets cold incoming air and they share their heat. Obviously it brings it only halfway up, so they come to the middle temperature, but it's better than pumping that air straight out. But it does work because it just, nowhere gets moisture, and that room should by rights be mouldy, but it's not. So
your system for that is in the loft?
it's actually in the utility room as well. I didn't take a photograph of it, sorry, I didn't realise there'd be interest. I will do that for next time.
If you haven't got a loft, it's like a flat, it's an issue.
It is, yeah. I mean, but this is why I'm working with BESCO on these community initiatives. You know, we're trying to find lofts that people can share to do that kind of thing, because that's the way forward, I think, particularly in the row of terraced houses where they've been converted. You find one person who doesn't mind using their loft for technology, and then everyone benefits, sort of thing. But, yeah. I'm going to show you what it looks like now. Oh no, I missed a page. Downsides. Right, yes. Currently Greywater is maintenance intensive. I bet you can't see that. It's probably for the best you can't see that because it's mouldy. This is the company just kind of going, no, I know. He wants an input filter. They got some chicken wire and bent it round this end of the pipe. This is where all the waste comes in from the house, and this goes to the drain. And the idea was the chicken wire would stop the crud. That crud is just skin and soap, and it forms a kind of a black film which gets washed down. There's no way of avoiding it. But it blocks up the pores. So currently this filter is only, I'm guessing it's about 50% effective. I've been fiddling with it and experimenting with it. I did put a sink drain filter here, but what I found was I caught loads of crud. And then when I tried to get rid of it, I got crud in the tank, so I stopped doing that pretty quickly. But my captured water went up immensely, so I'm thinking that at least 50% is lost. But I do have a plan. I'm going to buy a rainwater filter, like the one I've got in my rainwater tank, and put that, because it slows the water down. It spreads it out really wide, slows it out, and I think that'll do. But maybe I'll come back and tell you about that bit when I've done it. Yeah, here it is. Yeah. They said it's exactly the same as the last one. They said, omitting to mention, they put this massive blue expansion vessel on it, which means that I had to take it apart myself to get it through this door here, and actually swap the way the door opened. Never mind. But you know, things like this tank could be inside the tank. So here it is. You've got a pump down here, pumps it up through. Here's this. Oh, you can't even see it, can you? This long thing here is a carbon filter, and it pumps it out right here. This is my diverter, which I think I've got a better photograph of. Yeah. So this is a bit of swimming pool tech. This is where you enter the wonderful world of swimming pool tech is in imperial measurements, and everything else is in metric. Yeah. Hence these kind of rubbery things. And I believe, actually, having read the manual now, this is meant to be mounted on the floor, not on the wall, but you know, I've done it. I also bought myself a labelling machine as part of the process. I suddenly became worried that if I got hit by a bus, I would leave Liz with a house that didn't operate unless you had a PhD. So I've labelled everything. Yeah, so that was one thing they left off the original system. And I've also got, I mean, it's not strictly kosher, my system. In that, you know, rainwater and mains-water connected here, this should not happen.
No, it's not really.
Yeah. I mean, it's got return valves, I think, there.
Okay.
Yeah, but still.
It's got to be isolated.
Yeah, it has. And the isolation is just via a thing here, but that doesn't really work. Yeah,
After
I know
that
it's
as
gonna be
well. After
isolated.
that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and there are some sort of like in my system, but my theory is no one else understands it. So if you came and looked at the video, I don't know, probably okay.
They can look at them and say, I don't know why those aren't back.
Well, yeah, I could remove the labels. Eat them as they come out. What are you eating? Nothing. Okay. I've overrun slightly. So don't do this if you need to see a return instantly. Over this project I've seen the effects of climate change on rainfall patterns, and seen how rivers are overused and abused. I feel lucky to have this backup for my family, though it was hard work, particularly when cleaning things out, brushing things out. It's hard work pumping out a massive tank into the toilet in a house, trying not to make a massive mess. Over Christmas, when you realise that there's nothing you can do to stop the bathroom water going into a tank, there's nothing you can do to stop that festering pile of biological stuff from being there. I mean, it wasn't going down the toilets anymore, I'd stopped it going down the toilets, but I was literally storing a biohazard over Christmas, so make sure your family are relatively tolerant.
What did you do with that water in the
Well, when they said they're going to plumb in another version, I got some plumbers around, we got rid of the system, we removed it from the thing, I pumped it out down the toilets, and then they happily, the company who built it was so embarrassed they came and took it away. And I believe it's in their warehouse. They haven't got anything to do with it yet. But, positively, I have shown that, I mean, I wouldn't recommend you do it my way, but if we could all use a third of the water that we're using, wouldn't that be wonderful? You know, we're going to need to. And I know that it's a particular thing in Sussex that I'm aware of, chalk streams being very overstressed. So yeah, so I feel very smug about my water usage, but of course it was an expensive pain in the bum. But thank you. I guess we've got some questions, haven't we? Yes.
You've actually done a calculation, because obviously when the pumps cost nothing, you've got all the maintenance and stuff, and without the capture outlay, have you done a rough calculations to you actually saving money? I mean, I know there's this thing about not using so much water.
I haven't done that yet. I mean, I guess I'll get to that. I mean, it's quite hard. I mean, I tend to kind of be too competitive and push myself, so I push myself to turn on the computer system too early, and arguably it's only now really working okay and the filter's still not right. So I feel as though before doing all these calculations, I want it to run better. I want to fit this filter that's going to enable me. The filter, by the way, it says it captures 95% of the water. Obviously, some of the water has to wash the crud down the drain. So once I've got that in, I'm going to do the calculations. But I feel right now, because I keep turning it off and on, is it going to be an accurate calculation? But I will go there, and it is my intention to. I said this is not on the internet. I will stick all this on the internet at some point with some calculations.
The bottom line of like is what it's costing to run, and so on. Is it actually? How does that equate to the cost of the unit of water?
Well, I mean,
electricity.
Yeah.
Rather expensive.
Well, it is. Yeah. I mean, I would hope it's saving me money now if you could have ignored the cost of installing it in the first place. I mean, I don't know offhand what the cost of water is, but say with the standing charge we're using 30% of the water. I mean, that saving, I would imagine it covers the electricity, but I'd like to know how much. But I haven't done it yet.
So I've gone down a similar route to yourself over the
Right.
last 10 years, so probably interesting to compare. I went down very much a DIY, low cost route.
Yeah.
So to everyone listening to this will look very expensive.
It was.
The system I'd done was less than £100.
Well done. Yeah, yeah,
So to put it into perspective, you can do it very, very cheaply.
yeah.
It started off as a complete gravity, so it's got an external tank which is a second-hand oil tank before.
Right.
So for a few years the toilets smelled of oil when you pushed them, but that's gone away.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fine. I use half the roof for the rainwater, 1200 litre tank, and for 2 people it rarely runs out on toilets, just
Yeah.
on toilets. So that sort of puts it